You were taking part in the special plenary on migrant integration on Friday the 15th. Can you describe the approach Atlantic Philanthropies takes to issues around migrant integration?
Well, Atlantic is active globally, but only in 7 countries around the world. And in our human rights program, we make a priority of dealing with immigrants and migrants and refugees. And in all the countries in which we operate human rights programs, which is to say the United States, Ireland, Northern Ireland, and South Africa, we deal with significant issues involving migration. It's a core element of our approach to human rights that citizenship should not be the basis for exclusion of people from fundamental human dignity and human rights.
How are migrants affected by the current economic downturn?
Well, I think that in an economic crisis, the pain is distributed more widely than it ordinarily is. But whether there's an economic crisis or not, it's usually migrants who are being disadvantaged by whatever the state of the economy is. And so the reason you have migration is because there's vast inequalities of wealth and resources in the world. And so in the United States, we deal with a substantial issue of people from Mexico and Central America and Latin America, as well as other parts of the world, coming to the United States to work because they simply can't support their families in the countries from which they come. In Ireland, this is changing now with the fluidity of movement in the European Union, but in Ireland, which was a country that traditionally was a net exporter of people, in recent years with the economic boom, you had as many as 10% foreign-born in Ireland, a lot of them coming to work, Bulgarians, Poles, and so on. There's a bit of an outward migration going on now. Places like Northern Ireland have substantial numbers of people from other countries that they never had to deal with before. And finally, in South Africa, where we're quite active, the political, economic, humanitarian, and human rights crisis in Zimbabwe has caused millions of Zimbabweans to flee into South Africa, and often dealing in very dire conditions, and as recently as last spring, leading to some terrible bouts of xenophobic violence.
How is this in turn affecting your foundation's response to the issue?
What Atlantic is doing is based on the work that we have been engaged in for a number of years in the countries in which we're involved. We're looking at it more sharply through a social justice lens and asking ourselves questions about what are the underlying causes of the problem that sought to be addressed. Because if you put a Band-Aid on a certain part of the problem, you may not be addressing the whole problem. And you cannot look at migration in isolation from all kinds of other factors. You cannot look at it in isolation from race, for instance. In the United States, the fact that so many immigrants today are from Mexico and Latin America gives a racial cast to the anti-immigrant sentiment that can't really be ignored. You can't ignore the fact that the context for the vast numbers of Zimbabwean refugees in South Africa is, to some extent, the world's failure and South Africa's failure to deal adequately with the abuses of the Mugabe regime. All these things are connected. So we're trying to take a more holistic approach to the work that we do and look at the root causes as well as the symptoms.